Welcome to video lecture number 5 for Anatomy Basics. In this video, we are going to move on to the circulatory system. In this video, we are going to cover a couple things. The first one is going to be the functions of blood, because the circulatory system is referring to the heart and the blood that your heart is pumping. So we need to understand the function of that blood. We're going to talk about the different parts of blood, and we're going to talk about the 3 different types of blood vessels and how they engage in something called gas exchange. So let's move right into it. The functions of blood, there are 5 of them. So the first one is to transport things. Okay, so this is how oxygen gets from your lungs to your muscles. It's via your blood. So it transports oxygen. It transports water to different parts of the body that may need it. And it also transports nutrients to various parts of the body. Okay, so this is, blood is what takes nutrients from the food you eat that are being absorbed from your digestive system and takes those nutrients elsewhere into the body. It also helps to remove waste from cells. So as you are using up the oxygen that your blood is delivering, your cells are then using that to produce carbon dioxide and other waste products, and your blood is going to then carry those waste products away from those cells so that they can continue to function correctly. The third function of blood is to distribute hormones throughout the body. Those are extremely important because that's kind of the way that your body talks to other parts of your body. It's via hormones. The fourth one is going to be to fight infections. So if you were to get sick, your blood is what fights that infection off. And lastly, your blood functions to heal any wounds that you might have. So a paper cut, your blood is working to heal that paper cut. So those are the 5 functions of blood. Transports oxygen, water, and nutrients, removes waste from cells, distributes hormones throughout the body, fights infections, and heals wounds. Now let's get into the 4 parts of blood. So your blood isn't just made up of that red stuff. It actually has 4 different parts to it, and the first one is called plasma. Plasma makes up the highest percentage of your blood. 55%, if you look in the diagram on this slide, 55% of your blood is plasma. And we'll talk about what plasma is in the next slide. The second part of your blood is the red blood cells, and we abbreviate red blood cells as RBC. We also have white blood cells. We abbreviate white blood cells as WBC. And the fourth part is platelets. So if you look in that diagram again, plasma makes up the highest percentage at 55%. White blood cells and platelets make up about 1% of your blood, so you don't have a lot of those, but white blood cells and platelets are super important. And then the other 44% is going to be those red blood cells. So let's talk about the function of each of these. So plasma, you might not know what plasma is in relation to your blood, but it is that yellowish liquid in the bag you see on this slide. It's made up of 90% water and about 10% salt and proteins. It's kind of it's what makes your blood fluid. And this is the part of the blood that has the function of transporting nutrients and hormones and proteins throughout the body. So any nutrients that your digestive system is absorbing from the food that you are eating is going to be transported throughout the body via the plasma. When you get older, like when you get to college, I believe you have to be 18 to do this. You can go donate plasma because there are a lot of people who are in need of like plasma transplants. You can go to a place called BioLife, and they basically take blood out of your arm. It's completely voluntary, but you do get paid for this. So you go in, you sit in a chair, and they hook you up to this machine, and the machine takes blood out of you like you're giving blood. And then it takes the blood that it took out of you and it spins it in a centrifuge really, really fast. And it kind of causes your blood to separate like you see in this diagram here. You can actually see the yellow portion separate from the red portion. And then it's going to take that yellow portion, the plasma, from your blood, and it's going to collect that into a bag like you see in this picture. And then it pumps the red blood cells and white blood cells and platelets back into your body. Okay, so then that company is going to donate the plasma that you gave during the time that you were there to someone who needs it, and they do pay you for that. So, yeah. Next, we have the red blood cells. The function of your red blood cells is to transport oxygen to the cells in your body and also to remove carbon dioxide. So the reason why when you're running, right, your muscles are able to continue to contract and relax and use up energy is because your red blood cells are constantly delivering oxygen to them, which allows them then to use ATP to get energy. And then as the oxygen is used, it is turned into carbon dioxide, which your body needs to get rid of. So your red blood cells then are going to drop off the oxygen, and then it's going to pick up the carbon dioxide and then get that out of your body. So it's kind of like the postal service, right? Like a mailman delivering mail, but then taking the mail that you want to send out with it. And red blood cells contain a protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is what makes your red blood cells red. It is a protein located inside of your red blood cells. It contains the mineral iron. And if you know anything about iron, iron usually has like a kind of reddish color to it. And that is why your red blood cells are red. It is a complete myth that your blood is blue until it is exposed to oxygen. That is false because your red blood cells are constantly carrying oxygen, so they should be red if you are alive. The only reason, like if you look at your wrist, you see like blue veins, that's it's not because your blood is blue, it's because the light that is shining and reflecting off of those veins is going through layers of skin, and the blue wavelength is the only wavelength that kind of gets in and is reflected to your eye. It has nothing to do with the blood inside of it. But anyway, hemoglobin is the protein inside of red blood cells that carries the oxygen. So you can think of hemoglobin, well, let's think of red blood cells like a bus, okay? It is going to transport things to where they need to go and then pick up people and bring them back home, right? Like the city bus in Madison picks people up, takes them to work, and then when they drop people off, other people get on and the bus takes them home. Hemoglobin is kind of like the seats on the bus, right? If you think about the people getting on and off the bus, like gas molecules like oxygen and carbon dioxide, when people get onto the bus or when gases get into the red blood cell, they need to sit somewhere, right? So people sit on the seats of the bus to be transported, kind of like how oxygen and carbon dioxide are going to kind of sit on the hemoglobin to be transported throughout the body. Okay, so red blood cells like the bus, hemoglobin is like the seats, and then oxygen and carbon dioxide are like the people getting on and off. Okay. White blood cells is the third part. The function of white blood cells is to fight infections. So if you were to have some sort of an infection, whether it be bacterial or viral, the number of white blood cells is going to increase. So a lot of the time when you go to the doctor, if they think that you're sick, or if maybe they think you're sick but you're not even showing symptoms, they might run a blood test. And if your white blood cell count is high, then they know that there's something going on in your body that shouldn't be. So white blood cells are extremely important, like right now with coronavirus, right? We need the white blood cells to be fighting off any sort of infection that's inside of us so it doesn't harm us. Lastly, we have platelets. Platelets are also super important. They function to clot your blood. So if you were to get a paper cut, right, you start to bleed, but you don't bleed out, hopefully, because platelets are going to work to clot your blood so that you stop bleeding. So if you look in the diagram on this slide, you see there's, you have that blood vessel wall. And if you were to break that, like if you were to get a paper cut, you break the wall of the blood vessel and your blood starts spilling out of it. So when you cut your finger, blood starts coming out. That's what that top picture is showing. Then on the bottom picture, you see that you have platelets and some red blood cells, and you have what looks like a rope that's kind of tying everything together. So platelets are going to kind of wrap itself and all the red blood cells to form this clot so that it kind of creates a temporary wall of the blood vessel to stop the bleeding until that blood vessel can repair itself. It's kind of like a temporary wall of like sandbags before someone can go in and actually build a brick wall up. Okay, so that is the function of platelets. Now we're going to go into the 3 different types of blood vessels that are found in your body. You need to know the 3 different types and the function of each. So arteries is the first blood vessel, and the function of arteries is to carry blood away from the heart. Arteries, since they are constantly carrying blood away from the heart, have to have really thick walls in order to handle the pressure of the blood coming from the heart. So if you think about the heart, right, your heart is pumping. It's constantly pumping blood out of it. And if you've ever, like if you have a balloon and you squeeze it to let the air, get the air out faster, like if you have a blown up inner tube and you lay on it to get the air out faster, right, there's a lot of pressure on that valve to get the air out faster. Same with arteries. When your blood is pumping, it is putting a lot of pressure on the blood to get it out of the heart and to where it needs to go. So the arteries have to be really thick, because otherwise, when the heart pumps, that pressure of blood shooting out of it could potentially burst that blood vessel. So arteries are super thick so that they don't burst from the pressure of the blood being pumped out of the heart. Okay, so arteries carry blood away from the heart. A little bit of extra information that you don't really need to know, but I would like you to be exposed to. A lot of people tend to think that arteries carry oxygen-rich blood. All arteries carry oxygen-rich blood because they're coming from the heart. That is false. Some arteries carry oxygenated blood. Other arteries actually carry oxygen-poor blood, which we'll see in the next video. So if you ever hear that, that is a false statement. That's a myth that arteries just carry oxygen-rich blood. The second type of blood vessel is a vein. Veins do the opposite of arteries. They carry blood to the heart. And these have a thinner wall because there isn't that pressure that is coming from the blood being pumped. It's just kind of like a lazy river flow back to the heart. And so what happens, like if you think about blood getting down to your feet, right? So arteries are bringing blood from your heart to your feet. Okay, those are very thick. Gravity just naturally pulls that blood down to your foot. To get that blood from your foot back up to your heart, you use veins. And so veins have these valves because now your blood is working against gravity to get back up to your heart. So what happens when you contract your muscles, so when you flex muscles in your leg, you open up the valves and you push the blood up towards your heart through your veins. When you relax your muscles, those valves close so that the blood does not go back down into your foot. So every time you flex your leg muscles, those valves open, pumps the blood up. You relax those muscles, the valves close, and the blood just kind of sits there, but does not travel back down to your foot. Okay? So if you've ever been sitting for too long, like maybe now you've been sitting too long, your feet might go to sleep, right? That's because you haven't been contracting your leg muscles, so blood is pooling in your foot. So in order to prevent that, right, you should be kind of either moving your feet and your legs around to constantly contract those leg muscles, to keep opening those valves and pumping the blood from your foot back up to your heart, okay? The last type of blood vessel is a capillary. These capillaries are tiny. They are literally 1 cell thick, so only a single red blood cell can fit through at a time. And the reason for that is because this is where gas exchange happens. There we go. So this is where the oxygen in a red blood cell is going to be released into the surrounding tissue. And then any carbon dioxide from that tissue is going to be released, and they are going to take the place of that oxygen in the red blood cell. So if you look at the picture in the bottom left corner, okay, you see that we have a red blood cell carrying oxygen entering into the capillary. It is going to release that oxygen, and the plasma that's carrying nutrients might release any nutrients to the surrounding tissue. So again, think of it like a bus. The bus is going along the street, it's going to stop, and it's going to let off passengers that need to go to work in that area, and then it's going to bring on any passengers that want to leave the area. So the red blood cells then are going to continue on through the capillary. They're going to pick up carbon dioxide and other waste from that same tissue that it's delivering the oxygen to, and then it's going to carry that carbon dioxide and waste elsewhere to get rid of it. Okay, so that's the job of the capillaries. So if we go back a second in this picture in the bottom right, you see the red portion of the picture to the left. Those are going to be arteries, because you see at the top it says from the heart. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. The capillaries are really, really tiny, and that is where gas exchange happens. So that is going to be where, so the red is representing blood that has oxygen. The blue is representing blood that does not have oxygen. So the artery has oxygen in the blood. That those red blood cells with the oxygen is going to enter into the capillaries. It's going to release that oxygen. It's going to then turn blue in this image. And then it's going to go back through the veins to the heart without the oxygen attached. So I think that's maybe where the myth comes from, that red or that your blood turns blue when there's no oxygen. That is incorrect. That's just kind of the colors we use in pictures. Okay, so I'm going to just go over that one more time. So to the right of that picture, we have arteries that are carrying oxygen-rich blood from the heart. That oxygen-rich blood from the heart is going to enter into the capillaries of the body. It is going to release that oxygen, and carbon dioxide is going to take its place. So now we are turning blue in the picture because we no longer have oxygen in our red blood cells. We are going to carry that oxygen-poor blood back to the heart via the veins. Okay? Now let's talk about gas exchange a little more in detail. So this process of gas exchange involves two different gases. We have oxygen and we have carbon dioxide. Let's start with oxygen. So in order to get oxygen into our blood, that is where the lungs come in handy, right? So we're constantly breathing in oxygen. Oxygen is filling our lungs. Our lungs are then delivering that oxygen to our blood, okay? And then that oxygenated blood is going to then travel via the red blood cells to the tissues that need it, okay? And then obviously the tissues are going to take that oxygen and then they're going to put the carbon dioxide into the red blood cells in the oxygen's place. So now carbon dioxide is entering the blood from the body's tissues as waste. That oxygen poor blood is then going to go back to the heart, which is then going to pump it back to the lungs, where that carbon dioxide is going to be released from the blood. It's going to cause us to breathe out, so that carbon dioxide that's a waste product of our body's cells is going to be released through our lungs. So every time you breathe out, you are breathing out the waste products of your body. Okay? So the carbon dioxide is being breathed out via the lungs. Then when you breathe in, that oxygen that's coming in is going to replace the carbon dioxide in the red blood cells that you just breathed out. Okay, so let's go through that one more time. So we have oxygen entering in through the lungs. It's going to travel via your red blood cells to your body's tissues. Then your tissues are going to take that oxygen in, and it's going to release the carbon dioxide waste that they're producing. That carbon dioxide is then going to travel via your blood to your lungs to then release it when you breathe out. And that cycle is constantly happening. Okay, so that is it for video lecture number 5. If any of this didn't make sense, please try watching that section of the video again, and if you still have questions, let me know.